This is a clip from the latest episode of the Game Football podcast from The Times. To listen to the full show, go to wherever you get your podcasts. Let's move to the Emirates. And James Gheerbrant, you were there for us writing the match report, which you can also read on the Times website now. Arsenal 2, Tottenham 1. Give you a nice broad opening question, like I always do for you guys. Just about a fair result, I thought, watching this game from the office.
Yeah, I think definitely a fair result. I felt it was a match that Arsenal really dominated, to be honest. I think when you looked at the team sheets before the match, I think there was always a chance that Tottenham midfield could be, I think with the starting midfield being Bergvall and Bissouma and Sarr.
Yeah.
But then obviously after half time, it was Bergvall plus Maddison plus Kulusevski. But I felt the Arsenal midfield just dominated physically. I felt Arsenal dominated the game with physicality and intensity.
Right.
They just came out really, really hard and fast. And it felt like there were long periods of the game, like 15-minute, 20-minute periods, where Arsenal just felt like Arsenal were just constantly on the attack and Tottenham just could not get out. Every time Tottenham tried to get out, it felt like Arsenal just won those duels in the middle of the pitch, whether it was Saliba and Gabriel winning them on halfway or whether it was Rice and Partey winning them slightly higher up. And yeah, I felt Arsenal really deserved to win the game. Not, maybe not their most irresistible performance. And obviously the finishing woes were kind of still slightly apparent. But I think Arsenal actually, for all the kind of, all that's spoken about how good they are at set pieces and, that's the slight kind of, people being a bit down on them this season, are they just defence plus set pieces? I think actually in the last two games, including the Manchester United game, Arsenal have actually reminded us how dominant a kind of open play team they can be as well. Yeah,
I was going to bring this up later, but you mentioned it about intensity. That was there even on the television in the Emirates. Am I right? Tom Allnut, who was also at the game with you, is writing a piece that by the time you're listening to this, you can read on the Times website about. It was amazing to see, wasn't it? Crowd cheering for Kai Havertz when his name was read out, even off the back of his poor performance against Manchester United. They were wearing shirts for Gabriel Jesus, whose injury had obviously been announced. It slightly feels like it's like the whole club has kind of read the management handbook that Mikel Arteta's read and this is the kind of positivity that we're going for. Would you agree with that? Was that what it was like in the ground?
I think so. Yeah, definitely like a sense of unity. Like obviously, I think the last couple of results have been frustrating, but there was no sense of sort of like flatness or sort of. I mean, you wouldn't expect that, but there was. Yeah, I think it just felt like everyone fully behind the team, still fully behind the Arteta project. And I guess as well, maybe a slight sense that things have kind of come into slightly sharper focus.
Yeah.
Obviously out of the FA Cup, the League Cup semi-final still in it, but obviously looking like a bit of an uphill battle. And maybe with that Liverpool result as well, the kind of the season comes into slightly sharper focus. It's like the league is kind of probably really what may become their main focus if they don't progress in that League Cup semi-final.
Yeah, Gregor, what did you make of this game?
I thought Tottenham made it pretty easy for Arsenal for big spells of the game. Some of the football they play in their own defensive third is like.
Every time I see it, I have you going high wire act. You saying it in your accent.
I know we keep coming back to this conversation, and like when it works, and I know the theory behind it. I know they're trying to, draw the opposition in to create space in behind, but they never looked in behind. They just kept drawing Arsenal, kept knocking around in their own third and inviting Arsenal, who were really up for it. Like intensity is the right word. Their press was spot on, but there was never a moment where they looked to stretch the other way and kind of just give them something else to think about. So I thought Tottenham, you saw Ange kind of really down at the end, and I think it was right to be really. I think they were miles off it.
Yeah.
I think there were moments where they just couldn't get out at all, and you just think to yourself, you've got to do something different here. And I know that's not what Postecoglou was talking about. He wants them to do what they're doing better, but we go around in circles with Spurs.
Yes, we do.
I know they've got 4 out of their back 5, if you like, who are not first choice. Again, Archie Graves is a star, an absolute star. He was one of the best players, undoubtedly, and but it says a lot when great. Bergvall, to an extent, although he's a bit of a headless chicken at times, they're
He's
real.
a bit crazy, Bergvall, isn't he?
Yeah, but they're real.
In a really fun way, but he's a bit. He looks a bit bonkers. Like,
They're brave, and if your drive and your sort of heart is kind of lying with two 18-year-olds, I think that says a lot about the rest of the team, actually.
Yeah.
So
you think the more senior players are letting Ange down, like not buying into or not good enough to play this way? Because as you say, I agree with you, and it's interesting. A few other Tottenham fans on social media saying exactly your point. Oh, our best two players are two 18-year-olds. That's bad for the rest of them.
I think it's too black and white too. I mean, you look. We've said for a while who are Spurs kind of leaders, and I know often when you talk about leadership, you can be, accused of being a dinosaur, like saying there's bigger issues at play here. But even if Romero's playing, even if Van de Ven's playing, even if other senior players are fit and healthy, I've still said the same thing.
Yeah,
they're still not like someone who I don't know, a leader. Tottenham lacked leadership on the pitch, I think.
Yeah.
It looked really callow.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff. I mean, I thought you saw the failings of Arsenal, as in, yes, I totally agree with what James is saying. You saw the failings in them in the final third. I thought the final third, Arsenal were really poor because they could have won the game comfortably.
they could have been 2-0 up as well before Tottenham scored.
I just thought we saw why they can't sort of get over the line in the final third,
Right.
even though they were so dominant in the game. I thought Spence handled Sterling comfortably.
Yeah.
And I think Raheem looked like he didn't actually want to try and go past him.
Well, he tried once, didn't
Yeah,
he? There
and
was
that
that
was it,
moment in the
gave up.
first half,
Yeah,
and he was like, "Oh God, I've not got this anymore."
yeah,
It makes the early part of his Spurs career look really strange now.
What, Jed Spence?
Yeah.
yes. Yeah,
The
there's-
whole thing about Conte it wasn't a signing. He seemed almost to be making a point of that. But he's had several loans and doesn't seem like he's pulled up any trees too.
Well, he had
we've seen the way he plays.
But he also only
got.
got in now because of injuries, didn't he? Really,
Absolutely,
even for
yeah.
Ange. So
Yeah. I mean, Spence had an amazing time at Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
Done brilliantly well, but they chose not to sign him because they could have bid for him.
There's a lot of money.
What was a lot of money? What, 18 million? Was it 18 million? I think it was about 18, 16, 18
Yeah.
million. It wasn't a huge amount,
yeah,
Gregor. There was trouble there before. The trouble started at Middlesbrough with Spence.
Maybe.
And there was lots of stuff going on with Jed Spence. And don't get me wrong, he looks way beyond that sort of player. He looks a far better player, accomplished player. You sort of scratch your head of why it's not actually worked out for him. I thought Solanke was poor in the game for leading the line. I thought Gabriel and Saliba dominated. And yeah, he's battling away, and I get that. The one thing that struck me was how can Tottenham not realise the far post corner that Arsenal do 60, 70, 80% of the time? I'm not sure the quite number, but that far post corner where I was always told for corners, near post, get in front of your attacker because it's the low ball. Far post, don't let him get behind you. Because the behind you one, if you're low, you can't hit a low one to the far post. Everything has to be high to beat every player in the middle. Because if it's low, it's going to get headed clear.
yeah.
But to get caught in from behind when you're flat-footed, and Gabriel, yes, it gets a fortunate deflection and it ends up in the back of the net. I thought fundamentally that in itself was a reason why Tottenham give easy goals. And they remind me, and look, before I had a Powell's Tottenham fan onto me this morning about, we're missing him and we're missing him. And I said, your 3 subs cost 150 million quid. Richarlison, Maddison, and Brendan Johnson.
Brendan Johnson,
It's
yeah.
£150 million worth of subs they had, by the way, that came onto the game.
You're not having the injury point, are
But
you?
no,
To an extent.
Their style is a very strange one. They might remind me of a better version of Southampton, how they get caught. Because Southampton did it and were terrible, in my opinion, of watching them try to play out in ridiculous situations.
Under Russell Martin, this is,
Yeah, under Russell Martin. I look at Tottenham, and yes, they're capable of doing it. And when it comes off, it looks brilliant. But the traps were set by Arsenal. And that's why they never got out of their own half.
I just fundamentally, I just don't think Tottenham are playing good football at the moment. I think there's this idea that that they've been unlucky, but that they're playing good football because they're playing a sort of a style that's front foot and that's aggressive. And if you look at their goal difference, yeah, it's quite impressive for a team that's
Yeah, big
14th
time.
in the league.
We've mentioned it before.
But
yeah.
I just don't think they're playing good football, because I think good football, it's more than that. I don't think they're playing a type of football that feels secure, or that feels like it gives you like moments of the game where you feel like you're in control. That feels so absent. I don't feel like they're playing a type of football that's putting all their players in the best position to succeed. And I think those are also elements of good football. I think good football is not just about, being all that attack and, bringing on, it's not just about having like 5 attacking players on the pitch in the second half. If you don't actually have like a structure that allows you to get some sort of foothold in the game and deliver the ball to those players. I
just add one point, an important point on this, is that Arsenal played like it was a derby, with derby football. No nonsense, mixing it up as much as they could. Tottenham didn't.
Yeah.
Tottenham were playing this game that just felt so soft, and it didn't feel like they were playing in a derby. It felt absolutely Arsenal were.
Yeah, I really like it on a podcast when one of our writers brings up a topic that I'm then going to get them to write about. The James Gheerbrant essay on what is good football. Absolutely sold, 2,000 words whenever you want, because I am obsessed. You're quite right, though.
It's not Jed Spence coming in to sitting just in front of the D or the 18-yard box, collecting the ball from the goalkeeper and trying to turn when there's 3 men marking him. That's not good football. That's stupid football. Yeah. And they're doing it repeatedly. They've been doing it for swathes of the season. Even Basuma is great. I remember James Maddison earlier in the season saying he's almost press resistant. That's like a trendy, it's on trend phrase. There's truth in that. He's great at it. He can get the ball and he holds people off and he drags it and he pretends he's going to do, and he turns and he breaks the lines with the ball at his feet. Everyone talks about breaking the lines with passes. He does it by turning and beating a man at the base of midfield, and that's a big part of what you need to be the holding midfielder at Spurs. But when it goes wrong like this, and you've got really no cover, there's also an element of madness to that. Yeah. And you're watching Spence and Gray knocking it around, and as I say, in the corner around their own box in the first half. And they're doing quite well too, holding up. They're doing things that you would ordinarily expect a striker to be doing. Spence gets the ball and he's holding off the winger, and has the ball on his foot and he's rolling it about and you're doing this in his own third. This is insane. It's insane.
You're asking for trouble.
I want to kind of ask you guys something as well, because one of the things that gets me about Tottenham is they had that 4-0 away win at Man City. What was it, 2 months ago? Yeah. And that was, I know City
beat Liverpool 1-0 about a week ago.
I know City are not at their best at the moment, but that was a seismic result to do it 4-0 and to do it at Manchester City, where they hadn't been beaten for ages before that. And is that not the type of result where, as a dressing room afterwards, you're saying, this is where our season starts. This has to be the catalyst. This means nothing if we don't build on it. And obviously they haven't been able to do that. So what does I don't know, what does it say that they haven't been able to build on that?
I mean, it should be a moment like that, shouldn't it, Tom? But the one thing you've got to say is then I think they've had more injuries again since. Yes. There's always does seem to have been setbacks for them, and that's I'm not taking away that context. But
you said, you're right. They have had injuries, but the 2 players that have come in for the injured players, if you go Spence at left back and you go Gray at centre half, they've done brilliantly well.
They have, yeah.
So I'm a little bit. I watched them against West Ham. I think James, was we together at Tottenham West Ham? Because I was there whenever it was level 1-1 at half time. Second half, Tottenham blew away West Ham. Okay, blew them away. 4-1. They ended up winning the game. And I came out thinking, cool. When they get it going, they are good. But you watch them week in, week out. The consistency of a side that has got a bit of everything. They're not there. They're nowhere near that. Yeah. It's just too much of a roller coaster.
Yeah, consistency is the key. As James says, the goal difference, brilliant 11 plus goal difference, only 4 sides better than them. However, the stats are pretty damning. 11 plus goal difference, but they've also lost 11 games in the Premier League this season. Their joint most.
They're on course to win 43 points, I think.
Which I think would be their lowest Premier League.
Only side to have
lower
lost.
than Christian Gross, lower than Wandy Ramos.
Yeah.
Like, we had this conversation the other
We've
week.
had it
about
plenty
this
of
is
times,
not,
yeah.
This is not a position that a Tottenham manager in the modern era can survive. And like, if we're talking about those numbers, it's that
Certainly
Levy would
needs
be
to turn
pretty brave to
something
stick
around.
that.
Gregor, as you say, we'll definitely come back to Tottenham again this season. I just wanted to finish with a question on Gabriel, Arsenal defender. So watching this game was absolutely fascinated. He's a player that I and a lot of other journalists have picked out previously in his Arsenal career for kind of maybe having a ricket in him. Maybe there was that match where he got himself sent off against Manchester City. This game, I think it was his third man of the match trophy against Tottenham. Big game player. There was, as much as the goal, obviously making that header onto Solanke, there was a great clearance off Solanke's toe. Fantastic,
Yeah, that was a great
fantastic.
tackle.
Is he? I wanted to ask where does he rank now in terms of Premier League defenders? Because we had a conversation maybe at the end of last season about Saliba and Van Dijk, but is Gabriel now the more kind of totemic, the more leader of that Arsenal back line? Like, how are we viewing him? Because, as I say, he's gone from, in my mind, a player that I was always like, Arsenal at some point are going to have to replace him, to
Well, even the start of last
absolutely
season,
incredible.
even the start of last season, that was part of the conversation. There was talk of him maybe moving on, and you're right. He's grown in stature remarkably. It's kind of that's the word too. It's stature, and it's like and in leadership and presence, and I don't know. You see it. I've written a piece about defenders celebrating, blocking a cross or whatever. He does it, and you smile because he's like a big warrior, isn't he?
Yeah, big time.
And he is. He's someone who who represents Arsenal's other side.
Yeah.
I mean, the dark side that Arsenal have. Dark side's not the right word. The kind of warrior spirit that they have now, and that's true.
Well, that's what I mean.
Arsenal
He's
do
just
have that.
he's not as kind of classy as Saliba, so we maybe don't judge him as well. But I'm asking, that's the question I'm asking, James. Maybe are we now judging him slightly too harshly on this kind of basis of being a warrior, that actually he's one of the best defenders in the league?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of the best centre backs in the world. Really, I mean, top 10.
Yeah.
I would say.
He's made the Brazil team, does he?
Does he not?
Can't remember.
I don't think he's in the first. He got in squads, but I don't actually think he was a regular in the Brazil team.
Tone, what do you think though? In
I
terms
think
of-
I look at him and think, oh, I'd hate to play against
yeah,
you.
I was going to say. I was waiting for you to
Well,
say
you're
that.
going to battle all day. He's the sort of the Martin Keown Rash. He's the Vidic type of centre half. They're just no nonsense. What I give him a lot of credit for, that I feel that when you look at centre half sometimes, especially in the modern game, is fouls are given so easily, and you don't have to do a lot wrong to give away pen. He seems to avoid all them situations where he's got caught fouling someone in the penalty box so many times and giving away bad free kicks in bad areas. He seems to do it, but not as much as the way he plays.
Yeah. Which is, as I say, which is where he deserves
Arteta
credit.
was like that for a while. He got left out of Arsenal as well. He's, we're just talking about him as his career. Like Gregor talked about, they weren't so sure whether he'd move on.
Yeah.
It was a period, I don't think he was sure he was going to stay at Arsenal.
No, but
But
brilliant.
he is that type.
Yeah.
You said leaders earlier, and yes, but he is. He's that type of guy. He's going to put his head everywhere. He's going to come down the side of you. He's going to battle, and he's going to love it.
Yeah, absolutely. A huge performance from Gabriel and a huge performance from Arsenal, which, as I said at the very top, brings them back into the title race. We're going to come on to Sells in a minute, but I wanted to talk first about just the game and your reaction to it, because watching this game, even on television, listening to that crowd, you'd said it was going to be blood and thunder. You said the City ground would get behind them, and boy, you were right.
I thought it was a brilliant game. Like one of the best of the season. And a lot of that is because of the kind of the contrast in styles and the sight of a team not pressing. It's so refreshing. It's like
I love that you're saying that with your arms folded.
Van Dijk, like
finally.
half of the first, most of the first half, Van Dijk was like walking out with the ball, getting to the halfway line, and just being completely bamboozled by the fact that no one was giving a damn.
Yeah.
No one was closing him down. Like just looking for a pass, or just looking slightly confused by the whole situation. And Forest are so content and confident in the way they play that they just wait until you get into kind of maybe 10 yards inside their own half before they really start to engage. And they also kind of funnel you in. It feels like they're funneling you inside. Even as Van Dijk's coming out, you think Chris Wood's kind of stealthily manoeuvring himself around the side, so he's cutting off one side of the pitch and trying to funnel on one direction. It's all really kind of well orchestrated, I think. And then when they win the ball back, my God, they're fast. And, we've said this all season, but the first goal exemplified that. It was like a moment of chaos when the ball was bouncing a bit. I think Elliot Anderson tried to control it, and it bounced again, and then Hudson-Odoi was on it, and 2 passes, boom, goal. So that opened the game up, and that made for a brilliant spectacle in the second half. And Liverpool, to be fair, really turned the screw in the second half. They were
I was going to say, when you started talking about what a great game this was and how much you loved it, I thought you were actually going to talk about the second half and that kind of backs to the wall,
I enjoyed the first half
defending.
too. I thought the first half was fascinating. I thought because that sort of exemplified the way that Forest
culture
play,
clash.
And the way that Forest play, and the way that the point of difference. This is a team that are different to anyone else, and the way anyone else is playing in the league, and it's working, and that's refreshing to me.
Can I ask you a question? All of us really is that Nottingham Forest play that way, and I've watched them. I watched them early on in the season, and I watched them at Chelsea, and I thought they were terrific. Where they stood off, and like you said, it was a bit of a passive sort of press from Chris Wood, who would just filter someone to go elsewhere with the ball. But they don't get in many hamstring injuries. No, I'm serious. You look at Forest.
I didn't see that coming.
No, but because loads of teams are pressing so hard all over the pitch, where Forest are doing it, but half the distances. Now you might laugh.
No, I'm not laughing. I'm not laughing as in it's funny.
Yeah.
I think it's just as Gregor said. I didn't think. I've not even thought about it.
I'm watching it and I'm thinking, this team isn't chasing all over the pitch. When they go and when they break, they are making these great strides in electric pace, but they're not chasing everybody all over the pitch.
It is a really good point, and I think one of the things that that probably goes a little bit unspoken about is we're at a stage of the season where you've got games every 3 days. The physical attrition rate is huge. You've got a lot of players who are injured, a lot of players who are still playing but are playing hurt, and who have very little there's very little recovery time. Yeah. There's very little training time. Everyone is just sort of trying to get through. And I was thinking about this last night when Postecoglou was talking about how, Tottenham had come away from their identity and how, we want to be an aggressive team with and without the ball. And I was sort of wondering how sustainable, how possible is it to be that aggressive when the physical attrition at this point of the season is just so huge, and have Nottingham Forest kind of found almost sort of like quite a sensible accommodation with
exactly what I was thinking when watching this game. There's so much in modern football at times, like as much as I enjoy it and I'm fascinated by it, feels a little bit superfluous. It's like, do you need to be exerting that much energy to try and
running for the sake of it?
Yeah, and also no, but it's like also the fact of everything has a balance of risk and reward. So everyone now presses up high up the pitch because you win the ball back, you're close to the opposition's goal, you've got you're better likelihood of scoring. But obviously the risk of that is the space you're leaving behind, and that's what Forest are trying to exploit. On the other flip side, they're so content just defending in the box. There's times where Liverpool we're like trying to play little passes and 1-2s inside the box, and Forest were almost like, yeah, okay, but when it comes to the point you're actually going to have a shot, we'll be in front of it. Like, they're so confident and like relishing defending the box and defending the goal, the space between the goal. It's like you are watching it, you're just thinking this is kind of a bit more like what football used to be like. You kind of, you defend the box, people can do what they want around that. And yeah, they even cross the ball in the box. You're supposed to try and stop crosses. Yeah. But if you cross the ball in the box, we know we'll win it.
And I think that there's no one here that, going back to James's point about good football, because it's not like you're not putting it against. All I'm saying is that there would be other people that would say, well, they're not playing good football, and what they mean by that is the type of football that has become so common now. But it's still great to watch Nottingham Forest, isn't it? And as you say, in those transitions, they're still playing the type of good football that is commonly associated with the modern game. It's just that they're also doing the more, is it old-fashioned? I don't know. Is it, the more traditional side of the game?
I think it would be doing them a disservice to say it's old-fashioned, because I think there is a lot of thought goes into it. Yeah. And I think Johnny wrote a good piece at the weekend about this too. He said that he once interviewed Nuno, and Nuno was saying that you talk about the point thinking about where you're going to win the ball back, I think about the moments before that too, and then how you're preparing for when you're going to win the ball back. And like, so there is undoubtedly a lot of thought going into it. And there are times too when they do like, you know, it's not all letting the opposition have the ball and the transitions. There are moments where they have the ball and they can knock it about really well, and they can.
It's a really
they
good
can get
idea.
out to the wide men and they can create overloads. They're still a good footballing team, but fundamentally, this is their sort of the basis, the foundation for the way they play, and it's successful.
It's a really good idea to maybe not press as much and have a lot more energy when you got a 35-year-old centre forward who's looking. That was the perfect goal that he would score against Liverpool, exposing just behind Trent. A through ball.
The gap between,
yeah. It was the perfect goal that they could score against Liverpool because it's there to be done.
Yeah.
And I just kept thinking, have I got a column by this?
Yeah, I was going to say, James has got a column on good football. I was just going to, that was my next link, lads. Come on, give me a chance, for God's sake. That's your next column. The Art of Not Running by Tony Cascarino. Some of your former managers might agree with that as well.
It struck me the way Forest have played, and they were playing in smaller distances, of not getting injuries. Now, touch wood, because I'm not hoping that happens at all, because it was enjoyable. When I was at Stamford Bridge, this is the start of the season, watching Forest. I thought Forest were really good.
Yeah.
And I said at the time, this is a decent side. Because I picked Forest for my surprise of the year.
Oh,
right?
did you
And
now?
this is on record, but I never dreamt that they go. I meant top half of the table.
Yeah, well, we didn't in our show, did we, at the start of the season, Gregor? We had them 17th, which I'm happy to admit, Forest fans, you know, we're all, there's modern journalism. They always
That's
admit your
credit to the manager.
Always admit your mistakes. I want to come back to talk about Forest and Sells in
Liverpool,
just a second. Kaz, I wanted to ask you about Liverpool. You know, we've been dancing around this idea that, are they having a blip, weren't great against Manchester United, defeat against Tottenham. In the second half, they showed, no, we're still here, aren't they? We're still the leaders of the pack. There's nothing really, I didn't think, in this performance to suggest that there is a proper wobble happening.
It was a point gained, in my opinion. And you could look at it many different ways. Forest are a decent side, and they will take points off a lot of other sides this season. I was more disappointed by the Man United draw because they had a tactic, and it was for Manana not overplaying at the back, and they did it brilliantly. Manchester United. I was more bothered by at that point.
Yeah.
The defeat at Tottenham in the League Cup, well, I mean, I'd still think Liverpool had enough to go through.
Yeah.
From what we've talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So no, look, as the games come up, we get now to beyond halfway, and Liverpool's still top and still got the possibility of being 7 points clear. They're all right. They're in a great position.
The smile on your face.
He's happy. He's happy. Gregor, you said at the top about Matt Sells. Let's come back and talk about him. What a great performance. Some brilliant saves. Signed in the summer. Only 5 million, I think, the reported fee was. 32, you know, again, slightly fitting into that theme of let's just pick a good team, good players. I know 32 isn't old for a goalkeeper, but got to be one of the signings of the season so far, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's been a problem position for us for a while. Because Liverpool were outstanding second half. You do have to say this as well. They made a few little changes, and like Szoboszlai was dropping deeper. I remember kind of the whole conversation about Man United having two midfielders and Newcastle exploiting the space either side of them. That's sort of the thing that they tried to do in the second half. Szoboszlai would drop into little pockets either side of Yates and Anderson, and like start to create overloads there, and they started to open Forest up a little bit, and they were brilliant. But Sells, like a few of the saves were super. The one where Jota cut inside Murillo. Who was the other one where he came charging out?
Was
I
it
think that was
Gakpo?
to Jota again.
Was that Gakpo?
That
No,
would be
maybe.
Gakpo.
Yeah.
There were two saves in particular were outstanding, and then another low to his left right at the end. Like when on the rare occasions it became more frequent after, I think there was a stat and it was like after 66 minutes or whatever, the game completely changed. As soon as they started getting through Forest back line, he was the man standing in their way, and it was a brilliant performance.
Yeah, Liverpool excellent in the second half, but not great in the first half.